The night Daniel Bennett decided to humiliate his wife in public. He never imagined she had already planned his downfall. The restaurant was full that evening. Soft piano music drifted through the air. Candlelight reflected off crystal glasses. Couples leaned close across white tablecloths, celebrating anniversaries and birthdays. But at the corner table near the window, Olivia Bennett sat alone. She had arrived 20 minutes early. Her husband liked punctuality. At least, he used to. Olivia glanced at the elegant watch on her wrist. 8:25. Their anniversary dinner had been scheduled for 5 years of marriage. For 5 years, she had supported Daniel while he built his financial consulting firm from the ground up. 5 years of believing in him. 5 years of thinking they were partners. But something had changed recently. Late nights at the office, secret phone calls, strange credit card charges, and a perfume scent that definitely didn't belong to her. And Olivia wasn't naive. She had known for weeks. What she didn't know was how far Daniel planned to take it. The restaurant doors opened. Olivia looked up, and there he was. Daniel Bennett walked in confidently, wearing the same tailored suit Olivia had bought him for his birthday last year. But he wasn't alone. A young blonde woman clung to his arm like she belonged there. The entire room seemed to notice. The woman was beautiful. Elegant red dress. Perfect makeup. The kind of woman people turn their heads to admire. Olivia felt the moment quietly. Daniel spotted her immediately. Instead of looking embarrassed, he smiled. The woman on his arm whispered something in his ear and laughed softly. Then the two of them walked straight toward Olivia's table. When they arrived, Daniel didn't hesitate. He pulled out the empty chair. But not for his wife. For the woman beside him. The blonde sat down confidently. Daniel finally looked at Olivia. Evening?" he said casually. Olivia stared at him calmly. "Daniel." Daniel gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Vanessa?" Vanessa smiled politely. "Hi." Olivia didn't return the smile. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. "Why is she here?" Daniel sighed as if the situation were slightly inconvenient. "I thought it would be easier this way." Olivia leaned back in her chair slowly. "Easier for who?" Daniel folded his hands on the table like he was discussing a business deal. For everyone." Vanessa looked around the restaurant awkwardly, but Daniel seemed perfectly comfortable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Olivia watched him place it on the table. "What's that?" she asked. Daniel pushed the envelope toward her. "Divorce papers." The words landed heavily between them. At nearby tables, conversations quietly slowed. Vanessa picked up the wine menu and pretended to read it. Olivia didn't touch the envelope right away. Instead, she looked at Daniel carefully. "You brought your girlfriend to our anniversary dinner." She paused. "To give me divorce papers." Daniel shrugged. "I didn't want to drag this out." Olivia finally opened the envelope. Inside were neatly organized documents, legal forms, asset division, property agreements. Daniel had clearly prepared everything. Vanessa leaned closer to him and whispered, "See? I told you she'd handle it maturely." Olivia heard every word. Daniel nodded slightly. She's always been reasonable." Olivia flipped through the pages slowly. Daniel leaned back in his chair confidently. "You can keep the apartment," he said. "I'm not trying to take everything." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That's generous of you." Daniel smiled faintly. "Well, you never really contributed financially anyway." Vanessa let out a small laugh before quickly covering her mouth. Olivia closed the folder quietly. The candle between them flickered. "You're right about one thing," Olivia said calmly. Daniel looked pleased. "I usually am." Olivia placed the divorce papers neatly on the table. "You didn't want to drag this out?" Daniel nodded. "Exactly." Olivia reached into her purse. Neither did I. Daniel frowned slightly. What does that mean? Olivia glanced toward the restaurant entrance. Perfect timing. Daniel and Vanessa turned around. A tall man in a dark suit had just entered the restaurant. Now he walked confidently through the dining room carrying a leather briefcase. When he reached their table, he gave Olivia a respectful nod. Good evening, Mrs. Bennett. Daniel looked confused. Who is this? Olivia folded her hands calmly. This, she gestured toward the man, is my lawyer. Vanessa froze. Daniel laughed nervously. You brought a lawyer to dinner? The lawyer opened his briefcase slowly and placed several thick documents on the table. His voice was calm and professional. Mr. Bennett, these are formal legal notices regarding undisclosed financial liabilities connected to your company. Daniel's smile disappeared. What? The lawyer slid the documents toward him. A lawsuit has been filed this morning. Vanessa leaned closer. What kind of lawsuit? Daniel stared at the paperwork. His face slowly turned pale. Olivia watched him quietly. The same man who had walked into the restaurant planning to end their marriage. I was now realizing something terrifying, because the dinner he thought was his victory had just become the beginning of his disaster. And Olivia Bennett had known exactly how this night would end. For a long moment, Daniel Bennett just stared at the documents on the table. The restaurant noise slowly returned around them, but at their corner table, the air felt heavy. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice tense. Daniel, what is that? Daniel flipped through the papers quickly, his confidence disappearing page by page. Yes, this is ridiculous. Olivia watched him calmly, the same calm expression she had worn since he walked in with another woman on his arm. Daniel slammed the papers down. This is a mistake. The lawyer standing beside Olivia spoke evenly. Mr. Bennett, the lawsuit was filed this morning in New York State Court. Vanessa frowned. What lawsuit? The lawyer slid another document toward them. A financial liability claim connected to your husband's consulting company. Vanessa turned to Daniel slowly. Liability? Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This is just business paperwork. But his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Olivia spoke for the first time in several minutes. $42 million isn't exactly small paperwork, Daniel. The number landed like a bomb on the table. Vanessa's eyes widened. 42. What? Daniel glared at Olivia. You had no right to investigate my company. Olivia tilted her head slightly. No right? She folded her hands calmly. You used our shared financial accounts to guarantee those loans. Daniel's face tightened. That was temporary. Olivia smiled faintly. That was reckless. Vanessa stared between them. Daniel? What loans? Daniel snapped back at her. It's under control. But Olivia reached into her purse again. She pulled out a small folder and placed it on the table. This is the part you forgot to tell her. Daniel's chest tightened. Vanessa opened the folder before he could stop her. Inside were bank statements, loan agreements, default notices. Her face slowly drained of color. Daniel. She flipped through the pages faster. These are overdue. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. Vanessa, relax. These are just business risks. But Olivia calmly added, 3 banks are preparing to seize his company assets. Vanessa froze. Nay, what? Daniel looked furious. Stop talking. But Olivia continued. The investors he borrowed from are suing him personally. Vanessa slowly turned toward Daniel. You told me your company was worth millions. Daniel hesitated. It is. Olivia gently corrected him. It was. The silence between them felt unbearable. Several nearby diners were now quietly watching. Vanessa pushed her chair back slightly. Daniel, Is this real? Daniel's jaw tightened. They're exaggerating the numbers. Olivia leaned forward slightly. You signed personal guarantees for every loan. Daniel's eyes flashed. You were never supposed to see those documents. Olivia's voice remained calm. You left them on your desk. Daniel's stomach dropped. 6 weeks ago, late night, he had been rushing to prepare for a meeting. He suddenly realized what must have happened. Olivia had seen everything. Vanessa stood up halfway from her chair. Daniel, are you bankrupt? The word echoed louder than expected. A couple at the next table turned their heads. Daniel stood quickly. Sit down. Vanessa didn't move. You told me we were buying a penthouse next month. Daniel lowered his voice. Vanessa, I can fix this. Olivia watched the scene quietly, just as she expected. Vanessa looked back at the papers, then at Daniel, then at Olivia. You knew about this. Olivia nodded. For months. Daniel stared at her. Oh, you planned this? Olivia shook her head gently. No. She picked up the divorce envelope he had brought. You planned tonight. She slid it back across the table toward him. I simply came prepared. Vanessa slowly stepped away from the table. Daniel? Her voice had lost its warmth. You told me your wife was the problem. Daniel looked desperate now. She is twisting the situation. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Am I? The lawyer spoke again. Mr. Bennett, if the court rules against you, your company will be forced into liquidation. Vanessa's face turned pale again. Liquidation meant one thing. Daniel Bennett's empire was collapsing. And suddenly the man she thought was successful looked very different. Vanessa grabbed her purse. Vanessa, wait, Daniel said quickly. But she was already stepping back. You lied to me. Daniel shook his head. I didn't lie. You said you were powerful. Daniel tried to step closer. Vanessa. She cut him off sharply. But you're drowning in debt. Several people in the restaurant were openly staring now. Vanessa looked at Olivia one last time, then back at Daniel. And in a quieter voice, she said, I'm not going down with you. She turned and walked away. Her red dress disappeared through the restaurant doors. Daniel stood frozen. The chair beside him is now empty. Olivia watched silently. The mistress who had helped destroy her marriage had just abandoned him in front of everyone. And Daniel slowly turned back toward Olivia. His confidence was completely gone. You did this. Olivia met his eyes. No, Daniel. She stood up calmly. You did. She placed a few bills on the table for dinner. Then she added one final sentence. The lawsuit hearing is next month. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Olivia picked up her purse, and before walking away, she said quietly, You might want to start looking for a lawyer of your own. Then she turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Daniel Bennett standing alone, with divorce papers in one hand and a $42 million disaster in the other. The morning after the restaurant incident, Daniel Bennett woke up to 23 missed calls. And none of them were from Olivia. They were from banks, law firms, investors. And the last number on the list was his company's biggest client. Daniel sat up in bed, his head pounding. For a moment, he hoped the previous night had been a nightmare. But the stack of legal papers sitting on his kitchen counter reminded him it wasn't. $42 million. Or that was the number printed across almost every page. He grabbed his phone and called Vanessa, straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. The third time, the call didn't even connect. Daniel opened his messaging app. Her name had disappeared. She had blocked him. Daniel stared at the screen in disbelief. Just 24 hours earlier, Vanessa had been talking about moving into a penthouse apartment with him. Now she had vanished. And Daniel threw the phone onto the couch and ran a hand through his hair. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. His company was worth millions. He had contracts with investors, clients who trusted him. The debts Olivia exposed were temporary. Business risks, nothing more. At least, that's what he kept telling himself. But something still bothered him. Why had Olivia waited until the anniversary dinner to reveal everything? Why bring a lawyer? Why do it in public? Daniel grabbed his keys, and if he was going to fix this, he needed to get to the office. 2 hours later, Daniel walked into the glass lobby of Bennett Financial Consulting. But something immediately felt wrong. The receptionist avoided eye contact. 2 employees stopped talking the moment he passed. Daniel frowned. "What's going on?" The receptionist hesitated. "You might want to check the news." Daniel felt a cold sensation crawl down his spine. He pulled out his phone. The first headline appeared instantly. Saw a financial consultant under investigation for $42 million loan default. Daniel's stomach dropped. He opened the article. Every detail from the lawsuit was there. The loans, the personal guarantees, even the name of his company. Daniel whispered under his breath, "How is this public already?" He rushed toward his office. Inside, his business partner Marcus was pacing the room. The moment Marcus saw him, his face exploded with anger. "What the hell did you do?" Daniel slammed the door shut. "No, relax." Marcus pointed at the screen on Daniel's computer. Another news article had just appeared. Major investors withdraw from Bennett Financial amid debt concerns. Marcus rubbed his temples. 3 investors pulled their money this morning. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "That's impossible." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Not anymore." Daniel dropped into his chair. "They're overreacting." Marcus leaned forward. "No, Daniel. They're protecting themselves." He pointed toward the news again. "This lawsuit makes it look like our company is about to collapse." Daniel stared at the screen. Then something else caught his attention. At the bottom of the article was a quote, a statement from the legal representative who filed the lawsuit. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He recognized the name. It was the same lawyer who had walked into the restaurant last night. Daniel whispered slowly, "Olivia." Marcus crossed his arms. "Why is your wife's lawyer involved in this?" Daniel looked up. "She's not my wife anymore." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" Daniel hesitated. Then he said quietly, "I gave her divorce papers last night." Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "You did what?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "It was already over between us." Marcus looked like he might explode. "You divorced the woman connected to the lawsuit?" Daniel stood up defensively. "She had nothing to do with my business." Marcus pointed at the screen. "Then why is her lawyer the one suing you?" The room suddenly felt very quiet. Daniel slowly sat back down, because Marcus had just asked the same question Daniel had been avoiding since last night. Why was Olivia involved? Daniel picked up the phone and dialed Olivia's number. The call rang twice. Then she answered. Her voice sounded calm. "Hello, Daniel." Daniel didn't waste time. "You're behind this." Olivia didn't sound surprised. "Behind what?" "The lawsuit." A short silence followed, and then Olivia said softly, "You should read the documents more carefully." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I already did." "Then you should understand them." Daniel's frustration exploded. "You're trying to destroy my company." Olivia's voice remained calm. "Daniel, your company destroyed itself." Daniel paced across his office. "You planned this." Olivia replied quietly, "No." Daniel stopped walking. "What do you mean?" Her next words made his blood run cold. "I warned you 2 years ago." Daniel frowned. "Warned me about what?" Olivia sighed softly. The loans you kept signing. Daniel's mind raced. What are you talking about? Olivia spoke slowly. Those loans weren't just business agreements. Daniel suddenly felt uneasy. What are you saying? Olivia's voice became very clear. They were personal guarantees. Daniel froze. I know that. Yes, Olivia said. But you didn't read the last clause. Daniel's heart began pounding. What clause? Olivia's answer landed like a hammer. The one that makes the guarantor personally responsible for the entire debt. Daniel felt the floor disappear beneath him. That's standard, Olivia replied calmly. Not when the guarantor doesn't actually own the company. Daniel's breath caught. What? Olivia spoke one final sentence. The company you've been running for 5 years, she paused, was never legally yours. Daniel's hand trembled. What are you talking about? Olivia's voice was steady. You should check the ownership documents. Then she hung up. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. Marcus stared at him. What did she mean? Daniel rushed to his computer. He opened the company registration files. His eyes scanned the documents, and suddenly, he saw it. The ownership structure, the original incorporation papers, the majority shareholder. Daniel's hands began to shake, because printed clearly on the document was a name he never expected. Olivia Bennett, his wife, the woman he had just tried to divorce, the woman who had just filed a lawsuit against him, and the woman who legally owned the company he thought was his. Daniel Bennett had believed he had built an empire, but now he realized something terrifying. The empire had never belonged to him at all, and Olivia Bennett. I was about to take everything back. 2 weeks later, Daniel Bennett walked into a courtroom that felt colder than any place he had ever been. Not because of the temperature, because of the truth waiting inside. The hallway outside the courtroom was crowded with reporters, lawyers, and investors. The lawsuit had grown bigger than Daniel ever imagined. $42 million, 3 banks, 4 investors, and one company whose ownership had suddenly become very complicated. Daniel adjusted his tie nervously, for the first time in years, and he looked like a man who had lost control of his life. Across the hallway, Marcus stood quietly beside him. You should have listened to her, Marcus muttered. Daniel didn't respond, because Marcus was right. He should have listened to Olivia 2 years ago. Instead, he had ignored every warning she gave him about the loans. He had believed success made him untouchable. But now the empire he thought he had built was collapsing. And the one person who could save it was the same woman he tried to humiliate at their anniversary dinner. The courtroom doors opened. Mr. Bennett, the clerk called. Daniel walked inside slowly. The room was already full. Investors sat in the back rows. Lawyers lined both sides of the courtroom. But Daniel's eyes were only searching for one person. And then he saw her. Olivia Bennett sat calmly beside her lawyer at the front table. She wore a simple black suit. Her posture is confident. Her expression was unreadable. For a moment, Daniel felt the same uncomfortable realization he had felt at the restaurant. The quiet woman he once underestimated was now the most powerful person in the room. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. The bank's lawyer spoke first. He explained the loan defaults, the unpaid guarantees, the financial damages. Every word felt like another nail in the coffin of Daniel's company. Then Olivia's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we would like to clarify the ownership of Bennett Financial Consulting. The judge nodded. Proceed. The lawyer placed several documents on the table. These are the original incorporation records. Daniel felt his stomach tighten again. The judge adjusted his glasses and reviewed the papers. Then he looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Bennett, According to these records, you are not the majority owner of the company. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Daniel swallowed hard, and the judge continued. The majority shareholder is listed as Mrs. Olivia Bennett. The room became even quieter. Investors exchanged confused looks. Marcus slowly closed his eyes. Daniel stared across the room at Olivia. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply watched. The judge looked at Olivia. Mrs. Bennett, is this correct? Olivia stood. Yes, Your Honor. Her voice was calm. 5 years earlier, when Daniel wanted to start his company, banks had refused to lend him money. His credit history was too risky. So Olivia had stepped in. She had used her own financial reputation to secure the funding. The company had been registered under her name. At the time, Daniel promised it was temporary, but the paperwork had never been changed. Now that same paperwork had become the most important detail in the entire case. The judge spoke again. Mr. Bennett signed personal guarantees for the company's loans. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. The judge continued reading the documents. However, since Mrs. Bennett is the legal majority owner, she retains authority over the company's assets. Daniel's chest tightened. What does that mean? He asked quietly. The judge looked directly at him. It means Mrs. Bennett has the legal right to take control of the company and its operations. A stunned silence filled the courtroom. Daniel's company, his office, his employees, everything he believed belonged to him, had legally belonged to Olivia all along. The judge finished reviewing the documents. The court recognizes Mrs. Olivia Bennett as the legal owner of Bennett Financial Consulting. Olivia nodded respectfully. Then she turned toward Daniel. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Regret. Real, crushing regret. After the hearing ended, the courtroom slowly emptied. Investors approached Olivia. Lawyers discussed settlements. Daniel remained seated. He had nothing left to say. Finally, Olivia walked toward him. For the first time since the anniversary dinner, they stood face to face again. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. You planned this. Olivia shook her head gently. No. Daniel looked confused. You could have destroyed me years ago. Olivia's eyes softened slightly. But I loved you then. The honesty hit him harder than anything else. Daniel looked down at his hands. And now? Olivia took a slow breath. Now I'm simply protecting what's mine. Daniel nodded slowly. He finally understood. He had betrayed the one person who stood beside him when he had nothing. And now the consequences had arrived. Olivia turned to leave, but Daniel spoke one last time. What happens to me? Olivia paused at the doorway. Her voice remained calm. You're free. Daniel looked surprised. You're not pressing charges? Olivia shook her head. I don't need revenge. She opened the door. Then she added quietly, watching you lose everything was enough. And with that, Olivia Bennett walked away, leaving Daniel Bennett standing in the empty courtroom, a man who once believed he had won everything, but had actually lost the only thing that truly mattered.